Hello guys, welcome to OnQA. In this session, we are going to talk about the project sprint board. In the previous sessions, we have discussed about the project creation and setting up the project properties required in the Agile project management. So let's go and concentrate at this point of time to talk about and to understand and to set up a project board. So what is a board? So in the Agile or in the Jira, board has got a special meaning. So board is a display where we can view, understand, analyze, report the end-to-end execution for a project. I repeat, board is a place or a display where we can see the execution model. We can view, we can understand, we can analyze, we can report, and we could also track down the end-to-end execution model for a project. So that particular mode of analyzing, the mode of display is known to be the board. Now let's go and talk about and understand what is the board, how does that look like. So can we configure this board for a project based on our need and how to do that. So all the things required for a project sprint board. So let's get started. And to give you the one definition in the point of agile board. So what is an agile board? So a board is a display that gives you all the issues information so that we can view, we can manage, we can understand, we can report on the day-to-day execution. And typically there are two kinds of boards, the Scrum board and the Kanban board. So what is Scrum board and Kanban board? Please note that when we say Agile, Agile can be implemented in two frameworks, the Scrum framework and the Kanban framework. So what is a Scrum framework? A Scrum framework is the one which is intended for a fixed length project. I repeat, a Scrum framework is the one which is intended for the short or fixed length project. Example, all these software related projects are fixed length project. And for such fixed length project, we go for the Scrum methodology. Whereas the Kanban is intended for non-fixed length project or longer projects like call center, a system support or customer support. So these projects have got no deadline. It may go 2 years, 3 years, 10 years or lifetime. And in such long-term project or in such no fixed length project, people would prefer to use Agile in the point of the Kanban methodology. Whereas the software projects which have got fixed length, maybe 1 year or 1.5 year or a 6 months or a 2 year, such fixed length projects would go into the Scrum based implementation. So there are two boards, a Scrum board and a Kanban board. And basically we would stick to the Scrum board because we talk about the software implementations. So what is the board? A board is an area or a display that indicates the overall status of a project, that indicates the work in progress, that indicates the execution model so that we can view, understand, manage, report, track down the entire execution for a project. Now let's go and talk a little more about the board. And when we wanted to see the board, the Agile could give us the default board and it has got three segmentations, the to-do panel, in progress panel and done panel. By default, when we create a project, Agile provides three segmentations in the board, the to-do panel, in progress panel and done panel. In the to-do panel, the list of stories which needs to be done, the list of stories which needs to be addressed in the sprint can be listed. And based on the execution, based on the initiation, based on the implementation, they can be moved to in progress. Once it is done, tested, certified, approved, once it is completed rather, then we would move from in progress to done status. So these are the three default columns provided in the sprint board. But rather, when we wanted to implement an agile project with a customized approach, we need several board columns, several board segmentations like a to do, in progress, code review, QA deploy, test, business review, and done. And what is this representation? Whenever we wanted to any task or any story or any new feature, those would be added to do. When developer picks, when QA picks, that can be moved to in progress. And while the developer addresses that, and while the code is done, if we wanted to code review, automatically from in progress, that particular story can be moved to code review. All the stories which are in the code review bucket indicating meaning that the coding is done, the developer is unit testing or somebody is reviewing the code. Once everything is done, the developers would deploy the code. The developers would create a build for it. So the items from code review to moved from code review to queue deploy. So queue deploy indicates that the things pushed in a build. And we as a QA go and pick the items and then start testing it. Once we test, if the items are passing, if the stories are matching and passing, then we would move to business review so that the business administrator or the product owner can review them. If they agree, if they satisfy, the story can be done. If not, it can come back to in progress. So this is the generic approach required for any of the agile project. But by default, in the Jira, we have a logical representation that it can be only represented in three columns or three segmentations: to do, in progress, and done. But later on, based on the project need, we can customize the board. We can customize the board with respect to do, in progress, code review, QA deploy, test, or any of the columns or any of the segmentations that we require for a project. So in this session, we understand what is a board. And in the next session, we would create a project and then we would set up a board which is required for us. And to understand a little more, this is the area where we go into board and configure the board. In that mode, we can say the different segmentations like a to do, in progress, code review, QA deploy, test, from test to ready for business review or business review, from business review to analyze and tested and closed or directly done. So we can create any kind of state or any kind of tracker or any kind of field or any kind of column which is required for the project. And at this point of time, we understand what is a board, how does that look like, what we can do with the board, and what is the default board, and how we can customize the board. Once we customize the board, how the things would be looking like. And the next session, we would go and talk about how do we create a board. As we create a board, where do we navigate? And how do we set up a board which is required for us? Once we set up, how does that board would help us to review, to understand, and to implement the project management? And please note that boards are two kinds. In the agile project management, boards are two kinds: the scrum board and the kanban board. And what is a scrum board? Scrum board is intended for fixed length project. Like all the software projects are fixed length, maybe 6 months or 1 year or 1.5 year or 2 years at the maximum. Whereas the Kanban boards are intended for non-fixed length project like customer support, call center, any kind of medical representation. All the support oriented projects would be under the Kanban implementation. And we can do either way. We would concentrate in the next session to talk about creating a project, creating a board, Scrum board with respect to that project, and creating all the necessary segmentations required. So that is the intention. We go and talk about creating the board from the default to the intended board with all the columns like a to do, in progress, code review, QA deploy, test, business review, and done. So that is the intention. So we would continue and create a project and create a meaningful, detailed board. And then we can track down the project requirement, the project stories, the execution model, the assignment, the reporting, everything that we can view, understand, and track down with the Agile board. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you liked it. So let me summarize what we have discussed in this session. In this session, we have concentrated and understood all about the board. What is a board? Board is a display that helps us to understand, view, and visualize and report and track the project execution. Why do we need board? We need board because we wanted to track down the project execution. So is that a default board that we are going to make use of? No. By default, Jira provides a default board with the three segmentations: to do, in progress, and done. But however, that helps us to go back and customize our own board so that we can have several segmentations in the board like to do, in progress, code review, QA deploy, test, and then done, or business review and then done. So we can do the customization in the board as well. So how does that help? That helps us to track down the A to Z execution model for a project. So how many ways that we can create a board? We can create a board in two ways: a Scrum board or a Kanban board. Good. So we have learned detail about the board. We continue to implement the practical approach for a real project. So thank you so much. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you liked it. So please visit onq.com. There are so many videos, presentations, articles, books, and PDFs with respect to automation, test management, performance testing, and functional testing. So thank you so much, guys, and see you again.